Hello YouTube and welcome back to World of Warships with Wadres, and today I am coming to you from the beautiful Tier 8 Premium German aircraft carrier, the Graf Zeppelin. Yes, I broke down and I decided to get her just because I am something of a collector for a handful of the more unique premium ships, and this is definitely no exception. That being the case, however, I do have to say she is, not exactly, not exactly in the same boat, if you will, as some of the, dare I say, existing aircraft carriers that players have had a chance to work with before now. For starters, I've been having some difficulties actually getting her to behave for me properly. Now, granted, this could just be because I've only just gotten her and I'm still working with her, but I think in the series of battles that you're going to see, I only really managed to land like 2 or 3 citadels on enemy ships. Granted, that could just be down to my aim, among other things, but it's for AP dive bombs, I certainly seem to not find citadels as often as I would hope. Now, granted, my understanding also to a point is that the Graf Zeppelin is supposed to be more of a cruiser hunter than a battleship killer, but that still being said, the AP bombs should at least be somewhat more effective against battleships, so yeah, kind of running into some tricky situations there. The other thing is that because of the Graf Zeppelin's very tight dispersion, you can actually drop some nice tight bomb groups. But again, the thing is, you've got to actually be able to anticipate and hit your target accurately, which I'm somewhat there with the torpedoes at least, but dive bombs, I'm still working on it. I really am still working on it. It's throwing me for a loop every time. But the one nice thing that I will say about the Graf Zeppelin is, unlike any of her counterparts on the American and Japanese tech lines, she does have at least some capabilities of defending herself in close quarters, as opposed to any of the other Tier 8s, like, say, the Implacable, the, what is it, not the Ranger. The Lexington, that's the one that I'm thinking of. The Implacable, the Lexington, and the Shokaku. Just because she is German, and as a result, she has a very, very good array of secondary batteries, which I will freely admit, with the speed of some of these aircraft, I've actually decided to forego some of the speed and boost modifiers on the Graf Zeppelin's planes, in lieu of just bolstering up her secondaries a little bit, because, well, I do have a nasty tendency of putting my aircraft carrier into a position where enemy ships can kind of come around my side, at which point I just want to be able to at least do something to them before they obliterate me. And that is actually something that's going to pay off in one of the later matches that you're going to see in this video. But it's not going to be right away. And while it may also not exactly be the greatest thing to invest in for a CV commander, I do, again, just because the only other option would be some of the aircraft speed bonuses and whatnot, which this ship doesn't really need so much, because the base speed on these aircraft is impressive, to say the least. Definitely quick to get in and out of situations. And just, it's just much more of a logical standpoint from the defensive aspect, especially when you consider that I have had destroyers kind of get around my side in some matches, even cruisers in a couple of cases, and I like to make sure that my ship is well defended. So, and German ships, German tech lines, anything like that, they just tend to excel at having phenomenal secondary batteries. So I really feel that it's not too costly of an investment. Overall, though, I have to say that in a lot of respects, I feel like she is... While she does have some unique qualities, let me put it out to you that way, I do still feel that she is in the same boat, if not maybe even worse off than some of her other counterparts from the other aircraft carrier lines. And that's primarily because, well, her actual attack squadron power is kind of limited. I know that her torpedo damage is actually worse than most of the other aircraft carriers at Tier 8 too, I believe. And just overall, she just seems to have some rather anemic strike power. Now, I suppose it's made up for by the fact that you do have aircraft that can get in and out in the engagement zones quickly, but at the same time, it would kind of be nice to have a little bit more firepower, you know? But that's kind of a issue that we're dealing with just about all of the aircraft carriers anyway, so what else is new? And yeah, I was hoping that drop would not line up with the enemy destroyer hull, but it kind of ended up being that way. I probably shouldn't have even dropped at all if I had wanted to actually save those torps and have them be useful, but you know what? Hindsight's 20/20. But you'll notice I'm also making a distinct effort to not go for the Dallas. I'm focusing on this New Mexico just because it's really the only target I feel viable attacking, to say the least. And this is something that is a standout feature, I think, for just about any CV as it is in-game anyway, is just go for the big targets that don't move very well and are easy to hit. Especially when you're using torpedoes. Just, it makes life a lot, well, not necessarily simpler, but when you're trying to get damage so that you actually have a decent outcome on the match in regards to your own credit earnings, that's really just about what you're stuck with. But even so, you'll notice that after a little while, just like all of my other CV matches, I just kind of end up switching over to torps and just kind of sticking with them, just because it's like, it's the only consistent damage source I can come up with. Especially when it's getting into late matches where I really just want to do as much damage as I can before my friendlies actually finish the match off. So, yeah, it's just one of those things to be wary of, is just she suffers from the same things as all of the other CVs as they are right now. And there's really no way around it either. Now, the one thing that I do want to say about this video also is that the match you're watching is actually the second match that I played in the Graf Zeppelin. It wasn't the best. There were all kinds of things that I probably could have done a little bit differently, but also just well, there was no particular reason in actually showing this one as the first instead of the second in sequence, like I have with a couple of the other CV videos that I've done recently. Except for the fact that the first match, which is actually going to be the last one you see, was... I kind of wanted to save the best for last. And overall, I hope it kind of lives somewhat up to the expectation of being at least the best of the matches I've shown. I mean, I do miss getting the kill on New Mexico. And for this match, I mean, that finishes me off with, what? Yeah, 62,000 damage done, 11 torpedo hits, 15 bomb hits. I did not even bother with rockets this match. 84,000 credits earned, 1,600 EXP, 100 free EXP. On to match number 2, which was my third match in the Graf Zeppelin. One of the things that I am really wishing I had the chance to do, and in that regard, it is one of the things that I actually only slightly regret about having listened to Chase, Notzer, so on and so forth. When the Graf Zeppelin was first released over a year ago, is that I did not pick the Graf Zeppelin up when she was first released. I really wish I could have played some of her earlier iterations, which were a little bit better, especially the RTS version, just because, honestly, I feel like I was missing out on them now that I've had the chance to look back and reflect on it. But, again, that is only a minor regret. I mean, personally, from the perspective that I was dealt looking at, I would have preferred to have a ship that was workable than something that was clearly broken to the point of being borderline useless when they initially released her. So, the plus side is I did not have to be stuck with a ship that was basically had worthless dive bombs, and just... But I missed out on being a part of her testing, a part of her development, and above all else, I missed the, dare I say, honor, in some ways, of just being able to test her out, work with her, and be a part of her development and improvement. The other thing that I really wish had happened a little bit differently was just that once they had somewhat finalized her, in that regard, I wish Wargaming had at least put her back out for players to be able to work with while she was still in her, I guess you could say, well, that there's no guessing about it. It's without a doubt having the chance to play her in her most powerful state, which was the RTS version. Now, of course, there are people who are going to complain to holy hell about that state having been dramatically overpowered, which it probably was, but it was still something that was, by some accounts, rather fun to play with from the RTS CV perspective. And I wish I had been given that opportunity. So, yet another reason why I will forever have a grudge against the CV rework. But that's another matter entirely, and not really part of the discussion in this video, so I will get away from that as quickly as I possibly can. As far as everything with the Graf Zeppelin as she exists right now, she does have some good potential. I do feel that in a lot of ways her damage numbers, just like all of the other CVs, just kind of needs to be buffed, especially with the torpedoes. The torpedoes just... While they are nice at getting in some decent hits, decent damage numbers, they just seem very anemic. Again, just like all of the other aircraft carriers right now. The torpedoes just... These have virtually always been the bread and butter of aircraft carriers, even in the RTS version. And having them do so little damage is honestly practically insulting, I think, to the class of ships as a whole. So, yeah, I'm going to come out and say it again. I really wish that Wargaming would buff the torpedoes back up to something that's usable. At least from a damage perspective. I mean, granted, dive bombs, those are kind of becoming the staple of most aircraft carriers because they have direct control over them now and they can get sufficiently high damage numbers from them from a good CV player, but the simple fact of the matter is that it's not the only damage source that aircraft carriers have. And it just feels kind of insulting, again, that aircraft carriers, one of the main damage sources that they have, has just been taken away in favor of something that is a lot more RNG based. If I'm being perfectly honest in regards to just the dispersion you get when you drop your bombs. So yeah, I'm really wishing that they would give the CVs a little bit of love instead of just constantly hitting them with the Nerf bat, because I personally feel that the CVs are suffering. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of you who may disagree, but this is just the way I feel from my experience playing with CVs, and I'm also going to go out and say that I know I'm not the best CV player out there. I can guarantee that I am not the best CV player out there. I would like to think that I am at least a fair CV player, but it would be nice if it felt like my gameplay for even just being a fair CV player was being rewarded a little bit better with decent damage numbers. So yeah, I'm still and probably always going to be a little bit butthurt about that one. There's also the fact that it seems like, for whatever reason, Wargaming loves to consistently nerf the flooding chance of torpedoes for aircraft carriers. I think they also made some penetration nerfs recently to, I think it was the AP bombs on one of the carriers. I could be wrong. But it's just, I really hate the fact that the CVs are just being blasted again and again and again with nerfs that are honestly making the aircraft carriers exceedingly more and more difficult to play. This is supposed to be one of the most influential tech lines in the game. And yeah, I realize that they want these things to be balanced, but at the same time, aircraft carriers changed the entire naval combat arena as a whole, just due to the addition of air superiority. And in that regard, I mean, aircraft carriers were dominant in real life. So it pains me that they're so, dare I say, at least from my perspective, again, underwhelming in the game environment. That's just my perspective on it. And again, I'm sure there are a lot of you out there who disagree. Anyway, moving away from that, that last match was my second best match of the day. It was also the third match I had in the Graf Zeppelin, and I mean, it wasn't too bad. 74,000 damage done, 2,400 EXP earned, and 123,000 credits earned, which is not too shabby by any standard. But it was also one of those that kind of left me feeling like I could do better. Well, I kind of ended up in a situation where I ended up at bottom tier. So yeah, bottom tier is seldom ever promising when you're dealing with an aircraft carrier these days. And I'm basically charging straight into the jaws of an Iowa for that matter. So yeah, anybody can pretty much expect that you can pretty much kiss my planes goodbye for the most part once I start looking at an Iowa, or even the Edinburgh. I probably should not have charged straight through the Edinburgh's flak to get to the Iowa, but I was at least rewarded with 8,800 damage on the Iowa with the rockets. That is the one nice thing that I am noting about the Graf Zeppelin's rocket attack planes, is that when their rockets hit, granted they're practically worthless against destroyers. Just because they have so much penetration that they overpen real damn hard. But when you're shooting at a reasonably well-armored target like the Edinburgh or the Iowa, oh boy do those rockets hit hard, and they do all kinds of damage. So that's one thing that I think I am going to enjoy in the Graf Zeppelin when it comes to attacking armored targets. I was a little bit late dropping on that Edinburgh, but I was at least graced with one Citadel. I think that's only the second Citadel I landed in the entire course of 3 matches. So yeah, I really think the penetration on the armor-piercing bombs for the Graf Zeppelin needs to be brought a little bit higher. And I also probably made the mistake of charging through the Iowa's AA bubble. But it also was overlapping with the Edinburgh, so I don't think I was going to be too safe from AA either way there, now that I think about it. Friendly Edinburgh gets taken out by the enemy Edinburgh. So, yeah. Time to see what I can do about anything that's over here, honestly. And again, this was my first match in the Graf Zeppelin. So I was still trying to get used to her aiming dynamics and everything, especially that nice tight circular targeting reticle for the dive bombs. And yeah, I missed more than a few times, I will admit. And unfortunately, I think with the exception of that one Citadel, just about all of my bomb hits are exceptionally lackluster. They just don't quite land where I want them to. And the torpedoes, while I believe I do at least somewhat fairly with them, I still don't do too much better. Trying to get a drop in on the Iowa. Now, the one thing that I will say with my experience in regards to the Midway, the Midway Ranger, Saipan, even the Indomitable, the Furious, at least I can say that my torpedo accuracy is reasonably good. So I can at least be fairly sure that most of my torpedoes will find their mark. So that is at least one thing that I can take pride in, is just that my torpedoes, my torpedo and my torpedo accuracy is decent, to say the least. I'm still, again, working on my dive bombs and rocket accuracy. It's just... It could be much, much better. On top of the fact that I think I could probably use to pick my aim point when dropping bombs on heavily armored targets like battleships a little bit better to ensure proper penetration down into the citadels. And yeah, Tier 9 AA against Tier 8 CV aircraft, just, yeah. See, this is where I start realizing that I might be in a little bit of trouble, because I've got the Iowa coming up on my side. I'm really just about the only one giving it any attention, too. And I don't know exactly where that Edinburgh is, because I haven't actually been actively spotting it. And there's also still an enemy Monarch out there that last was seen in the middle of the map. So I'm also in that one point where having myself in the somewhat isolated and protected position that I started off in is actually going to somewhat backfire on me, because I'm alone. I have no friendlies over here with me to put the pressure on the enemy and help contribute damage into taking them down. So it's literally just me against this Iowa, and well, as you can imagine, that doesn't work out too well for the CV in most cases. I mean, you can already see from watching tracer shots and everything that my secondary batteries have already opened up, and it's just going to kind of go downhill from there. I do pull out the rockets, get another 8,000 damage hit on the Iowa. I probably should have pulled these out a little bit earlier instead of trying to mess with the dive bombs, but by the same token, I do have to note how fragile the rocket attack planes are. So just because they are effective does not necessarily mean that they can actually reach the target to do said damage. But yeah, here's where the secondary batteries of the Graf Zeppelin really start to play their part, because at this range, they basically can't miss unless they really undershoot, unfortunately. And while I have started investing in secondaries on this aircraft carrier, unfortunately I have not gotten to the point of investing in manual secondaries, which, although I do have my target selected, it's really not helping my dispersion all that much at this point. So there is that. But you will notice that that secondary battery count just keeps on climbing. That is probably the one saving grace again about the Graf Zeppelin, is just that these secondary batteries are very, very good at dishing out substantial amounts of damage. And she is at least relatively well armored, so I am tanking at least a fair bit of the HE shells that the battleships are throwing at me, though not as well as I probably could be. Now, unfortunately, I am also at the point where I am so close to these battleships that the AA does not have any chance of loose or lightening up against my aircraft. So basically, any strikes I get off, I cannot at all expect them to be recovered. And, well, that kind of ends up being the toll that I pay, in the sense that as of right now, I basically have no squadrons that I can viably send out to do anything against these two battleships that are shooting at me. And it's really only a matter of time, but you'll also notice that overall I have done, I've managed 220 secondary battery hits on this Iowa. Sorry, 228 secondary battery hits. So very, very high secondary battery hit numbers, to say the least. And that at least does give me some nice earnings on this match. Again, this was the best match that I had in the Graf Zeppelin, and this was the first match, I might add. So sadly, being bottom tier, it only went down from there. Or being top tier in some cases, it only went downhill from there. 130,000 credits earned, 92,000 damage done, 420 base EXP. So, yeah. But I managed to tank 530,000 damage. And the other thing is, though, the secondary damage, the secondary battery damage amounted to almost 9,000, or sorry, more than 9,000 points off of that Iowa, on top of the fact that the secondary batteries set a number of fires which amounted to another 19,000 points worth of damage on the Iowa. So overall, definitely good solid numbers in that regard, but it also required that I ended up in a close combat situation against the Iowa, where my planes were virtually ineffective. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video. That's the Graf Zeppelin for you. And I will catch you all again next time. I hope you all take care. Please do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And I wish you all happy hunting.